Hello and welcome to this episode of CXO Cafe, a series of interactions with CIOs and technology leaders on various aspects of digital collaboration. I am Anil Chopra, VP Research and Consulting at CyberMedia Research and your host for this episode. In this episode, we will discuss enhancing the communication backbone for a global workforce. Now, the pandemic has taught us that a business continuity plan doesn't only need data backup and recovery, but having an effective communication backbone and collaboration infrastructure is also a must. The more widespread your operations across geographies, the greater the need to have a robust infrastructure for digital collaboration. That's because business continuity requires a company's employees to not only connect with each other, but also their customers and partners seamlessly. And all this requires proper planning, selection of the right technologies, and understanding the specific needs of both office-going and remote employees, among other things. So to discuss this and many other aspects of enhancing the communications backbone and digital collaboration infrastructure for a global workforce, we have with us Santosh Srinivasan, Senior Director, Global IT Compliance and IT Services at Flex. Now, Flex is an American-Singaporean domiciled multinational electronics contract manufacturer. It is the third largest global electronics manufacturing services and original design manufacturer company by revenue. And the company has manufacturing operations in over 40 countries and has a global workforce around 2 lakh employees. Now, Santosh is a results-driven IT professional with over 27 years of extensive work experience in information security, IT infrastructure management, IT compliance, IT shared services management, and offshore vendor management. He has all the key certifications under his belt for most of his areas of work. Welcome to the CXO Cafe, Santosh.
Yep, thanks, Anil.
Santosh, so, one aspect is that, ensuring, as I was talking about communications backbone and all, so ensuring a fully functional communication backbone must be also, a critical aspect in any organization. So, you want to share some of your views around, some of the communication nightmares and all that you feel that, maybe in your own personal experience, you might have faced any kind of nightmares and all that you faced during this pandemic.
Sure. I think the biggest change is we transitioned from working from an office to working from home for a lot of the employees, right? I think that's where the biggest change was, because you plan for a lot of network connectivity in the office, network bandwidth in the office, and now you're dealing with people working from home. So how do you ensure that employees have the right level of connectivity to connect in, right? One is they need to have appropriate internet connectivity to kind of do their work from home, in addition to video conferencing, etc., from their homes. And the other aspect was having appropriate VPN capacity in the back end to ensure that employees could connect in, right? So otherwise, the rest of the connectivity remained more or less the same, right, in terms of from before and after the pandemic. And you also had to ensure that you had appropriate internet capacity in your back end to support all these employees connecting from home and doing the VPN connectivity. So as the VPN hit, that was one of the challenges that a lot of organizations ran into, was they didn't have appropriate VPN capacity, because you plan for a certain level of capacity to work from home and in your VPN, and then suddenly you see your transition from, and typically it's about 20-30% of your workforce that you plan for to work from home, right? And in this case, suddenly you see 100% of your workforce transitioning to work from home. So now, do you have appropriate VPN capacity in your backend? So the first few months was about getting appropriate VPN capacity in, getting a good set of partners and vendors that we work with to get that to get the VPN capacity in, and ramp up our internet bandwidth so that we could support all these employees connecting from home, right? And at the same time, we saw a huge demand for the internet dongles, right? In terms of giving employees dongles to connect from wherever they are. So like your GeoFi cards, etc., so that employees could connect from home with appropriate bandwidth and they could do their work. And then a lot of employees had fiber really picked up, and people started connecting using fiber from home. So that was the key connectivity challenge in terms of getting the communication infrastructure set up. And but then you have other groups, right, that you're dealing with, where you have like a help desk which is doing a lot of voice calls, and they're working from home. So how do you ensure they have appropriate connectivity, they have the right kind of setups, right headsets, etc., to work from home? And the other aspect of this was previously there was some number of employees who used to have desktops in the office. Now you need to kind of get laptops from them, right? So that was the initial part for the first 3 to 6 months, which a lot of organizations, including Flex, had to deal with to make sure all the employees had laptops, sufficient connectivity to connect from home and work. So that was pre and post. I would say that was the key challenge from a connectivity standpoint. Most of the organizations, including Flex.
Thank you. Now, one thing is clear, that despite whatever pandemic and all, work really can't stop in an organization. And in manufacturing, for instance, the biggest challenge happens is that a part of the workforce must come to the office while a part works from home or remotely. So what do you think can be done to ensure safe and smooth collaboration between employees, partners, and customers in such scenarios?
Yeah, I think see, even pre and post, a lot of organizations had appropriate collaboration tools set up, right, to work from home. So you had either MS Teams or Zoom or Cisco WebEx and all these tools that were already available to employees. So that, I would say, was there for employees, partners, vendors, all to collaborate. And then you had file services, like, for example, Box and other tools that you're using, and SharePoint, that you could share information with customers and other employees, right, where you could collaborate together and work on common goals, right? So you're working on a common PowerPoint or a common Excel spreadsheet. You could share it and then work and collaborate together. So a lot of companies had all these things already set up. I think it was only a question of, certainly the demand went up significantly. And previously, what was like you were meeting in an office meeting room and discussing, now had to become like a Zoom call, right? And then I would say part of it was the organization kind of ramping up in terms of capacity to meet the demand. The other thing was the employees had their own set of challenges where they had to have appropriate, I talked about connectivity, then they had to have the appropriate setups at home to kind of work in a silent environment where there was not too much background noise, etc. And so that was for an employee, right? Had the right furniture, etc. set up, and then dealing with the effects of the pandemic impacting people around them, and still being focused on the work aspects. So the collaboration tools, I think, were already there, most of them. I think for most of the organizations, it was just about increasing your license counts, etc. So to make sure that collaboration was more happening between all the employees and everybody could reach out, because there was some part of your workforce which was probably at the lower level where you typically did not plan for these guys to work from home. And now you have to start planning for licenses for them to work from home. That makes sense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, that basically means that we have a more of a hybrid workforce that has really, now come into effect. But do you think now that, this thing has been happening and we've been so used to this kind of a model of working, that a hybrid workplace model is now really here to stay, where, part of the workforce works from home while only a part goes to office? Do you think this will continue even after this pandemic is over?
Yeah, I think at least for the near term, for the next, I'd say 3 years, there is going to be a hybrid workforce that we're going to look at, and until the pandemic subsides, right? And then again, one of the challenges that I'm seeing from a personal perspective is that you go into an office, you're collaborating with an employee, and you're talking and you're whiteboarding and drawing things and all that. Sometimes that is very difficult to replicate on an online collaboration forum, right? So sometimes that is something that is missing, and probably there are adequate technologies available to replicate that. But I think that can't be replaced by an online experience where you're sitting and you're having a coffee and you're whiteboarding and you're brainstorming on things, right? So I think at some point in time, you're right. We are going to hybrid is going to be is here to stay, and organizations are probably going to transition to some kind of a flexible workplace model where employees come in certain days of the week so that collaboration happens. The person-to-person collaboration happens physically, and then the rest of the days they work from home. And already a lot of organizations are transitioning to that, right? In the longer term, so they are releasing floor space. All of the and a lot of organizations across different cities in India, you're seeing they're releasing up floor space, and they're planning for that the longer term, where they expect only a certain percentage of employees in the office at any given point in time. So that so hybrid is here to stay. The collaboration tools are still effective. One of the challenges that as you are seeing, right, is the security aspect of all of this. Is your network security perimeter is now extended to a person's home, and his laptop is the perimeter. And you're seeing a lot more attacks coming up now because of this, right? With this work from home scenario, a lot of organizations tend, and that's the other challenge to deal with, seeing how do you deal with the data security angle with people working from home. There might be requirements where, say, somebody is in a finance function and he says, I need to print out stuff, or somebody's in a legal function, he needs to scan things. So those kinds of things, you kind of try to deal with it, saying, okay, I'll send a printer home for you to print, but then you're thinking, saying, okay, you're printing it, now who's going to secure all that paper, right? So somewhere the trust has to be managed, but that is coming back. So hybrid is here to stay, but the thought process could always change, say 3 years down the line, where things settle down, and then organizations feel maybe employees need to be in the workplace more. But longer term, maybe some form of work from home was always going to be there, right? Because organizations, employees have delivered working from home all this time. So it's now that theory is proven, saying a person can be effective from the office or from home, and they deliver results. So I think it's here to stay for the long term.
Yeah, thanks. I think you're right. I mean, a lot of things have to be done to ensure that employees are able to work remotely. And you discuss some of that. But based on your experience, what are some of your learnings from now that so many people have been working from home for such a long time? Your learnings for enhancing this collaboration experience of employees. What would be some of your learnings? Because obviously now employees would also have come to expect of certain level of quality of video, or certain quality of services being offered. What are some of your learnings that you'd like to share on enhancing the employee experience?
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what bandwidth the employees got at home, right? So, and that affects their video and audio quality. So one of the things we keep emphasizing is make sure you have appropriate connectivity so that you can work from home, and that ends up becoming a prerequisite. So organizations will have to look at funding some of that to maybe to compensate the employee to have appropriate connectivity to work from home. And also, I think we are a chosen few, right, where we have a nice room where we can sit down and work. But then as you go lower down the order, these guys have smaller houses, cramped setups, joint families, etc. So it is one of those things, saying how do those people kind of, we can meet all the requirements, but then that struggle is always going to be there as you go further down the hierarchy, right? In terms of having a place where they can work from home. But I would say the key challenge is going to be network connectivity and to work from home. As far as equipment goes, a laptop is sufficient, but like I talked about, how do you replicate that whiteboarding experience, right? And the drawings, so some kind of a tablet where you can probably annotate and do things which would become more helpful to enhance that collaboration experience.
Right, absolutely. So basically, but the thing is that collaboration tools now are required, in our organization by different departments for various purposes. For instance, HR would probably need it to onboard new employees. Sales and marketing would need to interact with customers or do video calls and all that. And production might have to collaborate with suppliers. So is there any kind of customization that is really required in these collaboration tools or setups for different requirements? Like, for example, integrating them with video with, for example, business applications, for instance.
Yeah. So good point. I think that's one of the challenges we have seen. We've onboarded quite a lot of employees in the last year. And one of the things was making sure they have the appropriate assets as they join. Once they join, then how do you deal with the onboarding experience remotely using Zoom calls and trainings? So a lot of it, organizations have been transitioning to doing it over the collaboration tools that are available to them, Zoom, Teams, etc. And the other aspect is the documentation aspect of it, right? Where now we have to try to do all of this remotely, because previously when somebody joined the company, has to give a lot of documentation in terms of maybe certificates and other things that when he joins the company. So you're transitioning now to trying to scan all these things and get it into a shared location and a secure location, and then the organization works with it. So that is the other aspect of your onboarding experience, making sure they have the right tools. How do you kind of train them? Then as far as the manufacturing environment goes, one of the things that organizations are going to look at going forward is more leveraging augmented reality and virtual reality, right? In terms of training employees on the shop floor. So leveraging augmented reality, for example, if in a manufacturing setup. So if you want to look at a certain part and you have a problem on your floor and you're trying to get external vendor support, right? And in that case, you need a vendor to come in remotely and help you look at that equipment and figure out what is wrong with it. In that case, you have to look at some kind of an augmented reality, some kind of a tablet, which you could point at the at that particular equipment, and then the vendor could remotely troubleshoot it, and then he could also maybe one is the remote troubleshooting, and then your training aspect is going to be, for example, you could overlay something, right? So if you're looking at, say, a PCB, a printed circuit board, and you're trying to identify a problem on it, so you could have some kind of an augmented reality kind of application on a mobile phone or a tablet where you just overlay that, and then you can point out to users saying where he should go and do something. So those are things that you're gonna start leveraging more of AI and some of these tool sets to kind of improve that collaboration between vendors and your shop floor, and you're now got to deal with troubleshooting. Similarly, say you could leverage that for, say, a help desk experience also. If a user at home is having a problem, you could have some kind of a augmented reality kind of application where a user points it on a screen and the help desk agent can walk them through it, right? So those would be the additional technologies that would help facilitate that collaboration experience.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for sharing so many examples across so many different functions around, how collaboration and various technologies can actually come in. Having so many examples of so many different functions, what according to you should be the key elements of a digitally enabled collaboration environment?
Um, it just varies from the key elements is like I talked about is the bandwidth, right? And then having the appropriate tool sets. So your laptops all have the camera. You have tablets which have cameras, etc. Um, and then you're looking at some of these other things. So based on the use case, some of these tool sets are going to vary, right? So previously, see, for example, there was a need for a video conference to in your office workplace, right? So you used to have video conferencing equipment in your offices and the conference rooms for you to collaborate. Now that is done away with because now you have your laptops which have the camera and you're collaborating similar to what we're doing now over this call. So I think the key part is going to be the connectivity, and then as you're doing the vendor to employee, right, where you're trying to do this troubleshooting, then you have to start thinking about the security implications, because as they do the augmented reality onto your shop floor, is there some customer equipment that you're manufacturing, right, which probably is going to get leaked out to somebody when you've got something on a shop floor. So a lot of these shop floors have a lot of security requirements. You're not allowed to bring your mobile onto the floor and you're scanned, etc., to make sure you're not taking anything onto the shop floor. So how do you deal with this, with these requirements in terms of doing it securely and not revealing information that you shouldn't be revealing in the course of that collaboration experience, right? So so I would say, coming back to the key elements, good connectivity, a good laptop with video, etc., and then your collaboration tools could be Teams, Zoom, WebEx, etc., which helps the collaboration, and maybe some kind of augmented reality kind of application which you could leverage to enhance the training experience.
Thank you, Santosh. So good to hear about the key elements and all that. So last question, which again basically goes beyond just the key elements, but any important lessons or pointers that you would like to give to our viewers on enabling a digital collaboration setup, to keep the business running. Any last pointers that you would like to give as a technology expert with all your experience?
I think. I think I touched upon a lot of the points in terms of how to enable that collaboration experience. I think the next aspect of this is going to be, if we are working on a hybrid workforce model, then probably some kind of tablet, right? That's one of the challenges even I see, is how do I do an annotation and a whiteboarding experience, right? Other than taking my finger and trying to do it on my screen, how do I have some kind of a tablet where I can draw and that shows up on a Zoom? And those is one of the things which would enable that experience. As far as challenges go, I think from experience, I would say in the last 1.5 years, what we have seen is the key challenges. I think most of the organizations have dealt with the key challenges, right? So now the question is going to be, how do I deal with this going forward for the next, say, few years when we're working from home? Is, I would say, looking at the security aspects of all of this is going to become more essential, because of late you're noticing a lot of attacks that are happening to a lot of organizations, ransomware attacks that are happening to a lot of organizations. So it's one of those things that you have to keep in mind, saying now you have a very vulnerable workforce sitting at home, and how do you ensure that your organization's security requirements are balanced in this current scenario, right? I think that would be one of the key challenges that I would see going forward. Is all the tool sets are there in terms of connectivity and the applications and augmented reality. All of that is available today. Is now the security aspect of it, which probably in the initial 6 months or a year was like, yeah, the security aspect is there, but now I need to continue my business. I need to ensure my employees are enabled to work from home. So that was your key priority, right? Now you have to really go back and see what we need to do to kind of fix certain things, right? So you're looking at, say, two-factor authentication and things for your VPN environment, or other kind of things that you need to start looking at, which probably you're doing today, maybe you're not. Then you need to start thinking from a security perspective, saying what are the different vectors somebody could use to get onto your environment through this work from home situation. So through this hybrid workplace situation. So I would say those I would say the security aspect is going to become more and more dominant in the next, I would say, 3 to 6 months, where you're trying to protect yourself. So previously it was more about continuing the business. Now it's about protecting your environment.
Thank you, Santosh, for joining us today and sharing your insights. I think they were quite useful. We talked about so many interesting things. It has been a pleasure to interact with you.
Yep, same here, Anil.
Well, that's all we have for you today. And we really hope you enjoyed watching this episode of CXO Cafe and found it interesting and useful. We'll be back again soon with some more interesting chats around other aspects of digital collaboration. So stay tuned. Till then, goodbye and thanks for watching CXO Cafe.